Welcome to Behind the Facts, a podcast that focuses on shining a light on the individuals that work behind the scenes, curbing the spread of false and misleading information, and fostering a culture of accuracy. I am your host, Thipe Maelane.
How easy is it to access reliable data in your country? And what happens when fact checkers hit a dead end because the information they need simply isn't available? In this episode, I'm joined by my colleagues from Sudan and Ethiopia to shed more light on this issue.
Thank you so much. My name is Elias. I'm a journalist and fact checker from Ethiopia. I worked with the Associated Press news agency for more than 10 years. I also founded Ethiopia Check, a fact-checking organization, back in 2020. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This is Remaz from Beam Reports, Sudan. Beam Reports it's a Sudanese company working on fact-checking, explanatory journalism, and verified news. And this is basically the work that we're providing right now.
Welcome both, and thank you for joining us for this episode. Let's get right into it. What does access to data look like in your environment or in the country that you operate in? How easy or how hard is it to get access to credible data?
Access to information in my country, Ethiopia, has never been easy. Since I started journalism, as far as I remember, it was very difficult. There is a tendency to believe among government officials, even the private sector, to provide information may mean like doing favor for journalists, not like executing their work. And currently, as you know, a lot is going on in Ethiopia, particularly since the deadly war, the very unfortunate war, which cost like hundreds of thousands of people since 2020. And after that war broke out, it has even become very difficult because particularly the government, as you can imagine, is the main source of information in such cases, has literally shut down its doors. There is no press conference provided by the communication office. And to your surprise, the last time the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, the ruler of that country, gave a press conference was more than 4 years ago. No press conference at all, except the tweets and then the certain social media posters. And then when you go to government officials or ministries asking them for information, there is a tendency to fear that they might be somehow be held accountable for speaking to media, be it media outlets or fact-checking organizations. There is no data available on their websites that you can refer to. So in so many instances, as you described it, we hit a dead end. And then that means that like there are several stories that you would like to work on, but at the end we are not able to do. Because like just because we wanted to do work on something doesn't mean that like we'll have the end product. So it's very unfortunate, as I mentioned to you, my country, Ethiopia, particularly in the past 4 or 5 years since the civil war broke out in the country, it has become extremely difficult, and then government officials are shying away from speaking to the media. That's what it looks like to access information in Ethiopia.
Remaz, bringing you into the conversation, Elias has painted a picture of the information landscape in Ethiopia, and I'm curious to know if there are any similarities. What does the environment in Sudan look like when we talk about access to credible information?
I would say there is similarity because the accessing information in Sudan is pretty much complicated for several reasons. And if I would list them from what's I would say most vital to the list, in the top of the list there would be the government itself not working to provide structured data on an organized basis to the public and to the journalists. So you don't have that easy access to verified and accurate data. Even what you could find, you cannot 100% trust it as, verified or accurate information that you can rely on to build on an investigation or a report. The second reason would be definitely how weak the digital infrastructure in Sudan, because the official pages, they are not providing a regular data sets on what's going on on the country, on the government, how things progressing or deteriorating. So you don't know exactly what's going on. And I think we're having another reason that's making access and information it's even more complicated, which is the war. We're having war going on since April 2023, and since that time there is an information abundance. There is a lot of information coming out to the public, whether in the social media or the traditional media, and you gonna find it's really hard for the public and even sometimes for the journalists to differentiate between what's accurate, what's verified, and what's um, involved with misinformation and disinformation, because we need to consider the war propaganda, the fake news used as a part of the war. So accessing information in Sudan, especially right now in this era, is pretty much complicated.
You're listening to Behind the Facts.
This is Behind the Facts.
This is Behind the Facts.
This is Behind the
This is
Facts.
Behind the Facts.
You're listening to Behind the Facts.
Thanks for tuning in into Behind the Facts.
Elias, from what you've mentioned, we understand that when you have leaders of state who don't feed information to the nation, it can create an information vacuum or a gap where misinformation and disinformation and other forms of inaccurate information start to settle in. How does access to data or lack thereof shape the fact-checking process?
It's extremely affecting our work. Particularly during the war, as you can imagine, a lot happens during a civil war, which lasted for years and claims the lives of thousands of people. We would like to fact check on a number of claims that are forwarded to us. And also, again, unfortunately, the media landscape in Ethiopia is very sparse. We never had in our history a free media. I was very hopeful back in May 2019 when the World Press Freedom Day was celebrated in Ethiopia for the first time. I was in that meeting hall where the Prime Minister was present. So he was saying that access to information will be improved under his leadership. Imagine that was the time when he came to power. He came to power a year earlier in 2018. Access to information was promised to be made much accessible to journalists, fact checkers, or any other research organizations, but that never happened. So the end result is many media outlets will drop stories in which they would like to work on, which means compromising the public's right to access information. Actually, this facilitated a good way for the bad actors, particularly activists who have aligned themselves either with the government or against the government, to spread whatever kind of information that they would like to without any fact check to be done on their post. So, I mean, sometimes me and my colleagues at Ethiopia Check feel helpless because we can do nothing without information. We cannot guess, we cannot imagine. That's not how fact checking is done. We need to have facts on our hand to do fact checking on a certain type of claim. And then we are bombarded as the largest fact checking organization in Ethiopia. Imagine on Facebook alone, we have more than 270,000 followers on X or Twitter. There is a Telegram, also there is a TikTok account. So you can imagine, as the largest fact-checking organization, we are bombarded every day with requests for claims to be debunked, but we are unable to do so. And then one of the major reasons is access to lack of information. So it's an everyday challenge that we are trying to overcome. But at the same time, maybe we'll speak about it later, then this funding challenge came. That's another headache for us. So it's a very challenging environment in Ethiopia.
It seems like the pressure is coming from all sides. It's not just the political pressure and the lack of access to accurate information, but you've also just now slightly just mentioned the funding environment, which is something in previous episodes we've also looked at, like how do African fact checkers go about finding ways to create revenue for themselves so that they can become more sustainable. But one of the things that stood out is that media outlets are dropping stories which compromises access to credible information. Remaz, I'd like to find out, how does access to data or lack thereof shape the fact-checking process for you in Sudan?
I would say it's making it more complicated, especially as I mentioned in the war situation, because you need an easy access to data. the fact-checking process is depending 100% on the open source data, or I would say mostly depending on the open source data. So when it comes to the open source side, which is a data that you should find it available in the official websites, official pages, you wouldn't find it easily. And even if you find it, you would doubt it because you don't trust the part that's providing that information. So that's an aspect. The other aspect is if you are trying to contact, if you are trying to talk or to communicate with officials, with sources, you would find it hard to get a statement from their end, especially if we are considering the military parts, they are involved in the conflict right now. So definitely it takes us, like, it's not impossible. We still do our job. We're still working in this environment, but it makes the process even, I would say, longer and more complicated. So if it takes you in a normal situation 20 minutes to verify this information piece, it would take you more in a situation like in Sudan, because it would require from your end to extend your search um, limits, because you need to include sources on the ground, you need to try to dig deeper to connect yourself with officials and to do more deep, I would say, searching on the official sources so you get a verified data. So definitely it's making the fact-checking process more complicated, taking more time, which is jeopardizing something, which is spreading that misinfo. Because if you are taking time to verify whether if that thing is right or wrong, that definitely means that that thing, till you prove it is right or wrong, is spreading among social media and actual media, causing um, disturbance to the people on the ground. Especially people are pretty much sensitive to the news in a situation like in Sudan, due to the war and the danger, and they are afraid and uncomfortable about a lot of things.
And I think you highlight something very important about like the time delays between when the claim is identified, debunked, and then the actual report is put out, as compared to the time in between that process and when the report actually comes out. What happens in that time is that you have this gap. And in that gap, people are uncertain, they're not sure. And so you have misinformation and disinformation settle in at that time. In terms of collaborations, what are some of the hindrances due to the lack of access to data in the environment that you guys operate in?
What we did, by the way, in Ethiopia, I only know of one other organization which has like one or two staff members which work as a fact-checking organization. Ethiopia Check is the largest. So we are not able to locally partner with other fact-checking organizations, but what they did was we tried our level best to partner with other organizations, particularly media entities, so that like we'll have more access to some information that they may have. But the challenge is, just like the fact-checking desks, the media outlets have the same challenge. Even sometimes, they will circle back and then come to us and then ask us for some information instead of assisting us. So it's like a problem that exists everywhere. Everyone is trying to grapple with what to do to access information. Everyone is looking for the feeds that are provided by government officials, ministries, and stuff. Other than that, even to your surprise, the country's statistics agency, there is a statistics agency, they don't even have the latest, for example, figure about Ethiopia's inflation, or even for that matter, Ethiopia's population size. They have outdated information. So in such a case, it is extremely difficult to debunk some claims, and then we have to leave it. As I mentioned to you, that means compromising or jeopardizing the rights of the public to know information. And we have very limited contact and partnership with other organizations. We are part of the Africa Facts Network. We sometimes collaborate with Africa Check as well. We have, in terms of receiving some trainings we have done in the past. Other than that, it's a very sketchy kind of relationship that we have with other partners due to these conditions.
Ramaz.
I think, due to the situation in Sudan and how hard to access, I would say, data and information and verified data is making collaboration chances are pretty much complicated, but it's not impossible. I think we're still able to do some collaboration with other countries, with other newsrooms, and we have very successful um, cases and beam reports, and we did that. But I think if I'm looking at the collaboration from our end is pretty much complicated because we need to do an extra effort because maybe that other party that we are collaborating with, they having more structured data sets, they having an easy access to information, so they are able to build on that easily. But for us, we need to extend our search limits. We need to consider digging deeper, finding more sources, whether in official sources, in the ground sources, and trying our best to get this data verified because what you get it, you don't necessarily know if it is right or wrong or verified or accurate. So you need to work on another layer, which is verifying what you found, and after that, working on it. So it's doable, to work on collaborative pieces, investigations, or on reports. But still, it's a lot of effort from our end to rectify and to cover up for the lack of accessing and easily data for Sudan.
And in trying to build those collaborations, it's not just for us to look at the hindrances that blockade us from having those collaborations and having a more effective approach towards misinformation and disinformation. But it's also important for us to look at some of the solutions that can be put in place. In terms of solutions, Elias, how do you work around data access restrictions, particularly when we're looking at when there's no access to publicly available data?
As much as possible, we're trying to get other data available from externally, not within Ethiopia. For example, it could be data available on the World Bank website or the IMF or the other organizations. Or, for example, it could be, if you are writing something about journalists, it could be CPJ, it could be Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, or the other organizations. And the Brookings Institution and then the other major organizations. So that's what we are trying to do, trying to diversify our source of information, but at the same time trying to cultivate this relationship at home. And by the way, we are also hearing that the Ethiopian government is going to enact an access to information law, which in effect is implemented, not only passed, but implemented. Could be quite a coup for not only the media, but also for researchers and the like. So that's something we are also closely watching, but at the moment, this is where we stand.
Remaz.
I would say we're having a similar approach to solving the problems because, as I mentioned, it's pretty much hard to get an access to verified or accurate data through the official websites or the official sources that we have in Sudan. So what we are doing is we are working and we are having data sets to the organization, to the research institutes, to all the associations that are working on documenting what's going on in Sudan. On all the sites, we are trying to get the right data from other sources. They are not necessarily sources from Sudan, but they are sources focusing on providing an accurate data about Sudan. The other thing that we are doing is having people on the ground. We're having people involved in what's going on, whether if it is news, whether if it is fact checks, whether if it is the humanitarian situations in camps or in the war zones. So we try our best to get as deep as we can to get a deeper look, to get a closer look of what's going on in several places. We rely on as well as on the open source data. We using the geolocation technologies to provide us with even new satellite images, new images of certain places to get a deeper look of what's going on in certain place if we are not sure about anything. But basically it's a similar approach. You need just to extend your range of search, so you get an extra data from other sources that are working on the similar case that you're working on to rectify the lack of data that you have from your end.
Well, as challenging as it might seem, we are reassured that we have organizations such as Beam Reports, and also we have Ethiopia Check in Ethiopia that are doing the good work of ensuring that the information ecosystem is safeguarded, that people have access to credible information so that they can make informed decisions about their lives and their livelihoods. And I'd just like to thank you for coming today and sharing your insights, which will actually go a very long way in teaching other people about different environments and different approaches towards tackling false and misleading information.
Thank you so much, Thipe, for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. That was really interesting and mindful.
Continue to follow the conversation online on all streaming platforms, and remember to like, share, and subscribe. I have been your host, Thipe Maelane, and this is Behind the Facts.